Hello, so in this video, we are going to talk about how to create a form in Flutter. So creating a form in Flutter is pretty easy. You don't have to install any extra packages or anything. It's already built into the SDK. So I created a new branch in my Git repo here. I created a screen called form screen. So in our main.dart here, we're just importing that and using it here. I changed the title here and I changed the color to teal, as you can see. So for our form screen, I just have a scaffold with a app bar that says form demo, and I have a container for our form so it can look a little bit better. So let's get started creating our form now. In our form screen state, we're going to add some fields to our state here. Let's create, I'm going to do string. We're going to create name, email, password. I'm just doing it this way so you can get a feel for different types of data in your forms. So, in string, URL, string, I want to do phone number, and I'm going to just create one for numbers. I'm just going to use calories for some food. So string and calories. Next, I'm actually going to create something called a form key, or it's a global key, but the class is a global key. So we do final global key and form state. So basically, we're creating a key to hold the state of our form. So this is basically a reference to our form itself. So form key equals global key, same type here, so form state. Okay, I'm actually going to create a few different functions here. I'm going to create a function that returns a widget, and I'm going to call it build name field. So this naming convention is normal for Flutter apps. So when you're programming in Flutter, if you want to have a function that returns a widget for your widget tree, you normally want to start it with the word build, just to be consistent with the standards. And right now I'm just going to have it return null. And we're going to do this 5 more times. And I'm going to call this build email. Actually, let's leave out the word field just to make this quicker. Build email, build password, and build URL, build phone number, and build calories. So we have these 6 functions now that return a widget. So we're actually going to add these to our actual build function here. So we're going to first create a child of the container here, and the child itself will be a form. So there's a form class in Flutter that we want to use for this, and the form itself takes in a child. So the child is going to be a column because we're going to have a column of text fields. So column. And for the column, we're going to have everything centered. So we want main axis alignment, and then we do main axis alignment dot center. And then for this column, we want the children of the column. So we have an array of widgets that we have for our children, and we want to add in our functions here. So we want to add in our build name, and we want to add in our build name. And we want to add in our build email. And we want to add in our build password. We want to add in our, and you can kind of see how this goes. We're just adding these into a column here. Okay, and now we actually want to put a button at the bottom of this. So we're going to put a space in here. One of the best ways to add extra spaces to your widget tree is to use something called a size box. Size box. So this takes in a height. So you can see all the fields here. It has a key, width, height, and child. For this, we're only going to use a height to space it out a bit. So you can also use the padding widget too if you want to. So height 100. And we want to put I'm going to use a raised button here. And a raised button takes in a onPressed, which we'll come back to. I'm going to use the child first. And the child is going to be a text widget. And the text will take in a string. We'll call it submit. And then we'll add a style to this, which you can add like this, a text style, and then we'll do text style, and then color, and we're gonna add colors dot, I'm gonna say just blue. This will be the text color itself, not the button color. Blue, and then we wanna add a font size. Let's do 16, I think might work. So for onPressed here, we're going to have a arrow function, but we're not going to do anything with it yet. So, okay, so we have that. I'll do that here to make it easier to read. Okay, so let's save this and let's reload our app. Okay, so we have an error here. Build phone number. Oh, I have this twice. Build phone number. Missing one. Okay. Build calories. So we need to add something to our functions here, because if you try to run this with null values, then you'll get an error saying that you cannot have null values showing in your widget tree for your children here. So, and we're going to return a TextFormField. So this is the widget that you'll use for text forms. And there's a few different options that we want to add to our TextFormField. So we want to add a decoration. So a decoration lets you do things like adding a label to your field. So let's add in input decoration. This is what this takes in. And here we add a field called label text. So there's label text and label style. So we do label text. Oops, label text. And we want to call this name. And then we have a field called validator. This takes in the actual value. So it's always a string value. And we want to first check to see if it's empty or not. So if this is empty, so we could say if value. So Dart has a getter built into the string class called isEmpty. If it is empty, then we actually return the string that we want to show in the validator. So we return a string and we're going to say name is required. So that's pretty much it for the validation here. There's one more thing that we want to add here. So inside of our text form here, we have a parameter that you can set when it's saved. So when the form is saved, you can call onSaved. So you can see there's a few different ones here. There's onTap, onField submitted, onEditing complete. We're just going to focus on onSaved. That's one that you'll always use. So onSaved takes in the same value. So here we can say what we want to do with that value. So here we actually want to set the state. So we could say underscore name equals the value. So this is a really easy way to set the state in your widget. So we're in our state here. We're saying underscore name equals value. So let's go down to our build function here. We're actually just going to take this out. Let's just comment these out for now so we can see what this does. This and reload. So you can see now we have one field with name and we have submit. So if we type something in to our field here and press submit, nothing happens, right? Let's see what happens if we have nothing in our field. So press submit and you see that nothing happens, right? So that's because we're not actually telling our form to use the validation that we've created. So there's something else that we need to do for our button. In our button, we need to implement the onPressed method here. So we have onPressed, right? So the way that you tell your form to validate is you use the form key. So we're going to have a condition here saying if not underscore form key, the same form key that we used above, dot. There's a few different options here. There's current context, current state, and current widget. So using the form key, we have access to the widget, the state of the form, and the current context. So we use form key.current state. And from here, we can call a lot of different methods, but we're going to focus on the one that you'll use the most, and that'll be validate. So this is a function. If this happens, then we want to just return. So if our validation is not successful, then we return. Running this function itself will cause your form to validate itself, which would actually show the messages that we define in our validator field here. So we'll see how that works here in a second. So what do we do if our form is valid? In this case, we want to save the form. So if our form is valid, that means that this doesn't happen. This line doesn't get returned here. So if that doesn't happen, then we want to save. So we do underscore form key dot current state. And then in here, we also have a function called save. So you can see it saves every form field that is a descendant of this form. So this would be a point where you would want to actually use the data that you have in your form. So when we write this line here, form key.currentState.save, the onSaved method of each text field gets called. So onSaved only gets called when you type the .saved method of the form. So that's something to keep in mind. So when we type this line here, our state should be correct. We will print, let's actually just print all of these now. So let's do print name, print email. Just gonna copy and paste this a few times. Okay. So you'll only see this stuff printed in the console if all of our validation is correct. So let's comment these out so we can test our name here by itself. So I think I forgot to do one thing. I forgot to add the key to our form here. So in order to have access to our key, to our form key, we have to put the key field into our form. So it'll be the same key that we used or that we created up top. So without this, then the form key would be null and you would get an error here. So don't forget to add the form key to your app or to your form. Okay, so we have this, right? So let's run this. And we'll type something in here, something valid. So submit, you can see that we printed that out here and it's saved. So let's see what happens if we have null in here. So let's submit. You can see that we have a red area here. Name is required. So that means that this validator got called and this line was true. So we actually just returned from this. And onSaved never got called. So our name state never got set in our app. So that's something to keep in mind. Like keep in mind the flow of your forms, like how this all works together. It's really nice how Google did it with Flutter. So I'm really happy that this is all built into Flutter. So it's pretty nice. So let's add our other fields here. We'll start with the email. So we're going to copy and paste this because the format will be the same, but we'll change a few things. So we'll call this email. We have a validation. We're going to use the same validation for this. So we're going to call this email, right? So there's a class in Flutter called regex or reg expression to validate a string. So if you're new to programming, a regular expression is just a string of characters that lets you match against a certain condition for a value. For our email here, I'm going to say if not, and then we can say reg express. So reg express is the class name here. And then you actually put the regular expression in here. So it'll be a string of characters here. I actually already know what this is. I'm going to copy and paste it from a different file. And I'm going to just put it into here. Most people don't memorize these because you can see why. But whenever I need a regular expression, I just go to Google and type what I'm looking for in there, and I usually find it pretty fast. So, okay, so we have the expression here, right? Now we do dot, and then there's a lot of different methods for your expression here. We're just going to use has match. And then the input for this expression will be the value. Okay, so if this match is true, let's get rid of all that. Okay, so if this is a match, or sorry, if this is not a match, so that's what the not here is for, then we want to show an error. So we want to say return, I'm going to say, please enter a valid email address, something like this. That's fine. That should be it for this. We actually want to do return null here too. So don't forget that validator has to return something. So that should be it for our email. So let's go down to our password. So for our password, we're gonna have, let's return TextFormField. Let's copy this. So we're gonna call this password, and we're gonna say password is required, and we're gonna use password. I think that's all I'm going to do for that. It's going to be pretty simple. For URL, we're just going to have kind of the same thing here. Actually, up here, I'm going to add one more thing. You won't be able to see it on the simulator here, but we're going to have a keyboard type. So we're going to have keyboard type, and we're going to call it, this takes in a text input type. So text input type. And then you have a lot of different options here. This is why I created a lot of different fields for our form. We have visible password, so I'm going to use this one here. And that's pretty much it. So, and for this one, I'm going to use keyboard type. I'm going to use URL. So this will be URL, URL, and URL. Okay. So you can kind of see how this goes. Very similar stuff here. We're gonna have phone number, and there's a text input type for phone number here. So phone, and so for calories, this one will be a little bit different. So for this one, we want to have, I think number, yeah, number. And then calories, and so we have our string value, do calories. For this one, I'm gonna change the if block here. So I'm gonna say if calories, actually before that, I want to set it to an int. So I'm gonna do int calories. There's a way to parse data in Dart, which I like a lot. You just say, if you wanna parse it to an int, for example, you say int. If you want to parse it to a double, you say double. But I'm going to say int dot try parse. Instead of throwing an error like you would normally do with like a parse and say Java, for example, try parse returns null if it cannot be parsed correctly. We could say try parse value. Calories will always be either null or it'll be a number. In this case, we can say if calories is equal to null, or we can say if calories is, we're going to say less than or equal to 0. Then we're going to show a string here. We're going to say calories must be greater than 0. It's a little bit different than the other ones, but it's similar too. So if our calories is null, then we show this. If our calories is -5, then we show this too. So we can uncomment these, and we'll restart the app. And you can see now we have all of our fields here. So let's just press submit and see what happens with our form. So you can see we have 6 different errors. We have name is required. Oh, I forgot to add the email here for this one. Okay, so password, URL, phone numbers required, calories must be greater than 0. So if I put something in here that cannot be parsed to a number and press submit, we still see the error here. But if I put something in here like 5, we don't get the error. So let's put in all valid stuff here. Actually, for the email, so let's press submit first. For the email, let's put in something random, press submit. Please enter a valid email address. So it can detect that we don't have a valid email address. So we can put in something like an actual email, and submit. Now that is valid. Press submit. Not valid. Valid. Okay. So we can also add in something in our text form field. We could say max length. I'm going to say 10 for name. So let's restart. And the cool thing about the Flutter text form field is that it shows you the character length underneath it. So as you type, and then as we go up to 10, you can see that it doesn't let you type in any more past 10. So I really like how Flutter does the text form fields and the forms in general. It's really easy. Before we leave, let's put in all valid fields here to see if our onSaved method gets called. So let's put in password, URL. Remember, we don't have a regex for all of these, so any string should be valid for these, except we need a number for this one. So let's press submit. Oh yeah, we're not logging the other things yet. So let's uncomment these. Save, reload. So let's put in a lot of different things here. Press submit, and you can see that all of our print statements are getting outputted here. So yeah, this is how you actually create a form with Flutter. It's extremely easy. It's a lot easier than React Native. So we're getting these warnings here because we're not returning something. I forgot to put an extra return statement in here, so this will be return null. And now you can see that goes away. So yeah, I hope this all makes sense, and we will be using forms a lot in Flutter going forward. So you should always return to this video if you forget something on forms. It's very easy, very straightforward. So yeah, stay tuned for future videos. I'm going to be doing a lot more videos on Flutter. I'm going to start doing maybe one video on Flutter and one video on React Native every week, and we'll see how that goes. So yeah, thank you and happy coding.